Okay, cool. So, so the first question was like, the case study was on a banking system, and the first part of the question was to process the input validation and boundary conditions. So,
Yeah.
uh, so input validation uh, helps user to properly without how can I explain this? So, for example, if I'm a coder and if I have I don't have it an input validation in place, several things can happen. So I'm not checking for special characters, which can lead to injection or including tags or codes along with
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it won't clear if I don't have proper validation in place. It won't clear the buffer and use the space wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, then it's not just according to the OWASP or cheat sheet that I read.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just only important to set up validations at the client side as well. We also need to put it at the server side, which a lot of programmers generally miss out.
Okay, okay. What about the
Then
excesses attack you have written?
uh,
Akash, you have written about the excesses attack. What about it?
yeah, so actually, I was just reading that document right now. So XSS account, what XSS attack is a cross-site scripting attack, and you can insert malicious code into an input stream. So I was just reading about an example. So in a bank system, if I'm making a money transfer, and if in the field of the money where I put place like how much amount I want to transfer, I insert a script instead of that. And
Mm-hmm.
if there is no proper validation, the script would run, and I can actually get the money. I can make the script run such a way to get the money from the
Mm-hmm.
receiver's end to my account.
Okay, fine. So, how do you differ between the buffer overflow and the excesses attack in the same scenario? Since you have written the both the things.
uh Yeah, so buffer flow overflow is if I exceed, so I if there is a limit and there is no proper clearing of buffer space. So
Mm-hmm.
the initially it will start what you will call initially the pointer will be placed at we'll start off with the base pointer where the ESP will also be. But as we
Mm-hmm.
move as the ESP or the extended stack pointer moves down towards the base pointer and exceeds that particular limit. So there is a limit like for example strings are 4 bits and all. So if it exceeds that particular limit, then you can actually insert instructions into that. So that's what buffer overflow is. And whereas XSS, I'm just adding a script to
Mm-hmm.
bypass the access control. So
Fine.
that's the major difference.
Okay, 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 Akash.
It
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
fine. So, when you say using the outdated libraries and API, what does it mean?
So when you use APIs and libraries, most of them are developers keep updating them because they have some or the other flaw. So if uh, if if I'm using a library and I'm using a particular function in it, and that particular function doesn't have validations or is not correct, and if it allows as an attacker, it allows me to insert a script inside it, then I'm
Mm-hmm.
bypassing all the controls that library is supposed to do, and I can make it work in my way,
So,
in the way
how
I
to
want
take
it.
care about if the libraries are outdated?
So, if a bug reporter reports that this library is causing such problems, uh, the developers will look into it and will proper validation. So, like in case of Python, as far as I know, we if when we define a variable in a function, we put it as none,
Mm-hmm.
and if there is no input, then according to none, it will return nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
if there is an input or is a certain type of input, then only it will validate that and will work with that.
Okay, okay, okay. Fine. Thank you, Akash. Thanks a lot.
There's one more thing actually I missed in the document. That was the HTML entities.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times using base 64 and entities checks are not there, user can bypass this. The script will still run if even if there is proper validation.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it was it's fine, right, ma'am?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you, Akash.
Thank you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Yeah. Ashwin, are you there? Ashwin, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So just hold on. Let me open up yours.
Yes, ma'am.
Ashwin, where have you submitted?
Mm, Open book assignment 2 VAPT, ma'am.
I'm not able to see. How do you Kumar Ashwin, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Uh,
180301 file name.
yeah, it is written as Ashwin Kumar. Fine. Yeah. So Ashwin, when you take care about the internet banking, so how to go ahead with the how to minimize the session hijacking kind of attacks?
Okay, so there are like different type of attacks in session hijacking. So in the document I have covered two attacks which
Mm-hmm.
can lead to session hijacking, that is man in the middle and cross-site scripting.
Mm-hmm.
So basically in the cross-site scripting one can leverage the session cookies to
Mm-hmm.
get the cookies and use them
Mm-hmm.
at their own for proper access.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to mitigate that vulnerability in cookie there are different types of attributes, and one
Mm-hmm.
such attribute is http only attribute,
Mm-hmm.
which helps the web browser
Mm-hmm.
stop any javascript code to
Mm-hmm.
mm, get access to that cookie.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that's how we can mitigate the session hijacking using accesses.
What do you mean by session hijacking?
So session hijacking is suppose if we have an active session and
Mm-hmm.
any third party can get access to that active session and perform
Mm-hmm.
any activity on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
That is session hijacking.
Fine. Fine. So you have taken two different examples. Name
Mhm.
equals to Ashwin, email equals to ashwin@gmail.com. What do you mean by these entire line? Can you tell me? Can you
Yes,
explain?
so that I have written in access control. So
Mm-hmm.
while sending a web request,
Mm-hmm.
generally forms are being sent via post method
Mm-hmm.
that is not being presented in the URL parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So it is
Mm-hmm.
being passed as the body of the request. So
Mm-hmm.
there are few applications that send the roles in the roles along with the request instead of sending them from the server. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
see I have written and role is equal to 1,
Mm-hmm.
that is
So what
being
do you mean
sent
by
by
role equals to one?
sorry ma'am.
What do you mean by role equals to one?
Yeah, I'm coming to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so by default the server is sending, the web browser is sending role is equal to 1 along with other details, that is telling the server that it is a general account and
Mm-hmm.
not any special account. But if we
Mm-hmm.
try to modify that, like intercept that request and modify the roles value to 0,
Mm-hmm.
so it turns out to be that 0 is an administrative privilege role, and that can
Mm-hmm.
be granted to any user if we intercept that request and send it back.
Mm-hmm.
So that compromises the access control vulnerability.
So do you mean to say role equals to zero is going to traverse along the HTTP request?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. Fine. Okay. What is the RBAC?
RBAC is role based access control.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows like there are certain privileges in an application.
Mm-hmm.
So users are granted those privileges in terms of roles. So
Mm-hmm.
each role is having a specific set of privileges that or that they have to perform certain actions.
Fine. Okay. Thank you, Ashwin.
Okay,
Thanks a lot.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And all the best. Stay healthy and stay safe, Ashwin, since you are traveling today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Akshay, are you there? Akshay Londe? Anubhav Jain, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Jain,
Hello.
Anubhav, you have not submitted to me.
Ma'am, actually, I just checked. Actually, I did submit it the last time before 12:30. But at that last moment, I undo to edit some file, and I just checked right before the class started. In the phone, it didn't show that it was turned in, so I
Do
did
it
it.
right now while the class is going on. I will take yours lastly.
Ma'am, I have done it right now again. It's
Please
showing
submit
me
it. I'll
completed.
take your discussion last. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Fine. Avi, are you there? Avi Jain? Avi? I think she's not there. Or am I not audible to her? Tanmay, are you there? Tanmay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me open up yours.
Ma'am,
Yes, who is it?
ma'am, Avi, ma'am, I just got disconnected.
Fine, not a problem. Avi, I will take yours first and then Tanmay yours. Fine?
Okay,
Can you
ma'am.
please take it, Avi? Yeah. Yeah, Avi, coming back to question number 3 in your case. Uh,
Ma'am, am I audible?
yeah. You are audible to me. Yeah. Now we are talking about the configuration details, configuration errors. Can you tell me about the configuration errors one can have while developing or deploying any kind of applications?
Ma'am, just a minute, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, so the configuration weakness that I have taken for this banking application question is that I have taken SAML single sign-on. Ma'am, SAML single sign-on is a service that offers only one ID that can access all the services of a particular organization. Like here, there's one banking system, and in that one banking system, there are several kinds of accounts like saving accounts and all the kind of IPOs that we put from a particular account. So only one username and password is used for all those services. So single sign-on is the service that provides just one ID password, and that will be used for all the services within an organization. And if we want to exit from one application, like if we want to exit from a particular IPO, we have finished putting that IPO, then we will only exit from that. It is not like that we will exit from the whole banking application. So it gives us the opportunity to use just one for all the services.
Okay.
And
So what could be the different kind of errors when you say the configuring the SSO? So what could be the different errors? Can you tell me?
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so when the ma'am the SAML response is sent in the form of a with a valid signature that the server uses to access the particular bank account, the hacker can hack into the network and then he can change the response and also alter the valid signature. So he'll get the original valid signature, and then at the place of that he can put some malicious code in the form of that signature and can send it to the server. So the server wouldn't know that it has been altered. He wouldn't know. So he'll think that it is the valid user and he'll authenticate it. So
So
in
do you
that
mean
way,
to say the server is not having any of the idea whether to check whether the signature is valid or not?
yes, ma'am, I was coming to that, ma'am. Ma'am,
Okay.
so these kind of attacks when they happen, we need to put a particular signature alteration, uh, the signature alteration attacks that happen. We need to put some protection for that. So that the SAML validation is done. But in many cases, we see that the many companies or many organizations have a intrusion detection system that often alerts when the signature is altered or it has been used for any malicious use. But here I've taken that the bank assumed, I can say, that the banking application is not that secure and it is a startup, so it does not have it has not invested in security policies that much, so it is on the base level right now, so
Thank
that
you.
has
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Avi.
okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Let me. Tanmay, are you there?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, Tanmay. Can you explain me about the question number 1 for the internet banking system?
Yeah. Okay. So what I have written is basically, ma'am, in the banking system, you had asked us about the validation attacks, right? How can the validation attacks be done in different kinds of environments, right? So, ma'am, first, if you think of from a point of view of hacker or an attacker, whatever, he or she will first think that how can he obtain the data, because data is the most crucial thing for any banking system or financial corporation. So obviously for extracting the data, obviously a banking system will have different kinds of layers or security layers to, so that it cannot, any attacker cannot just simply get into the system and extract the data. So basically it can be, he has to or she has to make different efforts, like there are some kind of common attacks, for example, which I mentioned, like the XSS attack, the cross-site scripting attack, and the and the DOS attack, DDoS attack, which is basically, which, and one of the most common is, ma'am, if the firewall is there, then and the firewall is not always very strong, like it depends from network to network. So in DOS attack, what happens is exactly, you actually bombard the basic network or the that particular channel of network with like huge amount of traffic. So the firewall's job is to just like filter out the traffic and just authorize and just get into the or permit the authorized user, right? But if you just bombard too much of traffic on that particular channel, then obviously the firewall will also go into the denial of services, because if too much of traffic is there, it won't respond, because it will also have a certain limit. So if that is to be mitigated, either the person or the network can have two or different layers of firewall, okay, or the firewall can be either integrated, like if there
No,
is
but
one
how the
channel.
boundary? No. Tanmay, just hold on. How the boundary conditions are going to be? Which kind of boundary conditions are majorly, a kind of risk for the application? Can you tell me the
um,
boundary conditions? Yeah.
Boundary conditions, ma'am, I am not very sure about that. That is the reason
Okay.
I
So
didn't
when
find.
you go, what do you mean by input validation here?
Yeah, ma'am. So input validation means when the system is getting some input, right? So you have to first check and that whether the particular input is actually authorized or actually valid or not. Like if, for example, if the user credentials are there on the login page, so if they are particularly like, for example, in the
nominal form, like 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, numerical form, but you are using an alphanumeric credential. So first the system needs to validate whether the input is actually as per the system rules and the requirements.
So
That
I'll
is
say,
set by the admin.
tell me suppose, just hold on, tell me suppose I haven't validated the input, fine, and rather I haven't validated the boundary value condition, you can say. So what are the different ways by which you can take care about, okay, these are the problems since we have not validated the boundary value conditions. So it is going to open up this kind of vulnerability. So can you focus on that?
Ma'am, you are saying that when you there is an input but you are not validating, right?
Yeah, so which kind of vulnerability it is going to open up?
Ma'am, I guess these are all part of the input validation itself, right?
No, no, no. See, these are all part of the input validation. I'm not saying that. But specifically, can you tell me the example of it? I'm just asking you the example. What if the error message, if the input is getting validated and the error message is going to be quite user friendly? So user will get to know that, okay, this is the reason for the error. So that user could be any kind of attacker, isn't it, to take care about the credentials. So if the hints are being given, so in that case the person is really aware of how exactly what could be the password.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
do you remember we have discussed under this particular thing that whenever you
Yeah.
display after that, after the input validation, whenever you display the messages should not be very much user friendly. It should not direct the user that what went wrong. It can
Yeah. Yeah.
tell
It
the
should
user that okay,
basically
how
hide
exactly it
that
went wrong.
particular information in the
Yes.
system. Yeah.
Are you getting my point?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
So
you need to take care about the answer in that way. Yeah. Now, can you tell me you have written about the information leakage? So what do you mean by this information leakage?
okay. So, ma'am, if the basic credentials or the whatever the data basically, crucial
Uh-huh.
data of the data system is
Uh-huh.
obviously stored in a server or a centralized database, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay. So if that particular server or the database is storing clearly on the, you can say either a plain text format or such a format where everyone can access that, then it is a kind of information leakage for the software, right? You have to
Okay.
maintain the integrity as well as the confidentiality in the system.
Okay.
Because in
Okay.
the, ma'am, if I can relate it to the previous assignment also, where you had
Uh-huh.
asked us about the where the password are getting stored in the very plain text format in a
Uh-huh.
system. Okay,
Yes.
in suppose office system or whatever. So, ma'am, if there is place like a plain text system or whatever, if that is being stored and if any or if it is even stored in the database within credentials but it is accessible by other employees, okay, irrespective of being in different departments, but then
Mm-hmm.
also there will be a problem of the integrity or confidentiality, because if not the hacker but inside employer can use it for his own purpose, right, to harm the corporation or whatever. Yeah,
Okay.
so that can be a point where you need to like maintain the keep in mind the CIA trait and work on it, because and that's where you can actually mitigate it, like maybe RBAC, because role-based access control can actually make it much easier for maintaining the integrity.
Fine. Thank you. Thank you, Tanmay. Thank you. Darren, are you there? Darren?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So can you tell me about that? In the question number 1, you have written this can be prevented by accept known good input strategy. What is this strategy all about, Darren?
Ma'am, this can be like whitelisting the inputs,
What do you mean by
as in
whitelisting?
they'll like we need to specify set of inputs which will match the input which the user is uh,
input entering.
Okay.
So like by matching it and any wrong input that enters is can be disregarded.
Fine. Okay. And are you aware of that? We always say that every input is untrusted.
Untrusted. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So then how I can say that this is a good input?
Ma'am, because we are defining that own list of what can be accepted.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you mean by sanitizing the inputs?
Sanitizing means removing any residual data like those cookies data and all.
Okay.
And
Can you elaborate more with the banking example? You are going in the correct direction. I just want more elaboration. Suppose you have taken the bank, the example of internet banking. So how exactly the things are?
ma'am, like we can take the person's age, like we can specify a limit where the age is greater than 0 and less than 100 or 150.
Okay. Fine.
And
So do you mean
yes,
to say it should be for the internet banking, the percentage should be greater than 0?
or it should be greater than 18.
So here itself, Darren, you are introducing the vulnerability into that.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, so when you say brute forcing the session ID, what do you mean by this?
Ma'am, the attacker will use all forms of the session ID. Like
Fine.
all creation, he like create a list and all random numbers and alphabets and create a session ID.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Logging out at the end of every session. Do you mean to say that whenever you are logging out, your session, whenever you are logging in, the new session ID is going to be generated?
Yes, ma'am. Like for every session, there should be a new one, and like the developer should also create an expiry date for that session, where the
Okay.
user cannot stay in that for a long time
Okay.
in that
Fine.
same session.
Mm, okay. Now suppose during the configuration, I left the HTTPS port open.
Ma'am, then that the HTTP header can be accessed. Yeah, so from that the attacker can get to know the session ID and all.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Darren.
Welcome, ma'am.
Devraj, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Devraj. Devraj, what is your last name?
Kukreja.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. What are the boundary conditions, Devraj? You said that range and constraint validation. What do you mean by that?
Ma'am, so boundary conditions like while picking a new password, we can put conditions like it should have these many characters, or it should include a special character and a capital, something like that. And that is like we can implement all this in like a part of boundary conditions, so that the passwords are not too weak of the users that account, so that they are not easy or they are not common use passwords, so that they are lesser prone to brute force attacks and all.
What do you mean by brute force attack?
So in brute force attack, attacker uses a predefined dictionary where there are commonly used passwords and all, and it tries to access, it tries all these combinations on a user's user until the attacker gets the access.
Okay.
To
Fine.
prevent it, like the developer can use things like only 3 attempts are possible in a day, so that if 3 attempts are failed, like if you don't get the password right in 3 attempts, you are blocked for a certain period of time, and only then you can access your internet banking or whatever application.
How do you differentiate between the the brute force and the dictionary attack?
Um, I guess don't have any. I guess it's the same. I'm not sure, ma'am.
Okay, so brute force is meant to take care about guessing the passwords. Okay, so whatever the error message or whatever the messages you are displaying onto the screen, so those many of those many of what you can say the messages are going to give the hint to take care about what could be the password. So this is a kind of brute force. And when you say the dictionary in the dictionary you are going to have the different kind of what you can say the passwords, or different kind of you can say the permutations and the combinations to take care about the words which are getting used, which could be used as a password. Fine, Devraj?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Himank Yadav, are you there? Hello. Himank, are you there? I hope I'm audible to you. Are you there, Himank? Himesh, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello.
Himesh, you haven't discussed the first one. So I marked you absent. So whenever the next is going to come, I will ask you to go for. Okay?
Okay.
Yes. So Himesh, what is your last name?
Jen.
Yeah.
Miss Jen.
Yes, Himesh. So can you tell me about the question number 2? To check the access control and session hijacking with the authentication mechanism. How exactly this should be?
In the access control, we can set different types of accesses. Like for the users, they can access only the banking situations like transaction funds and all that things. And for a banker, they can do all other kind of different stuff. They have the access to access the some bank rates or FDs or RDs, everything. Loans department also is there.
Okay. So what do you mean by the access control mechanism? What do you mean by the term access?
In the access control mechanism, actually, the users can access different parts of the system.
Different parts of the system. Okay. For example?
For example, as a user, I will have the access to only for some specific is, some specific things like for transaction, I have access control, and for seeing the receipt of the previous transactions. As a banker, I will have different kinds of access control like that.
Okay. Fine. Thank you, Himesh.
Thank you.
Ritik, are you there? Ritik? Are you there, Ritik? Jahnavi? Are you there, Jahnavi? Jatin, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
May I open yours?
Ma'am, I'm trying to join again. I'm unable to hear you.
Who is it?
I'm not able to hear you. I'll try joining in again.
Muskan, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So let me open yours. Okay. Yes, Muskan. So how exactly the internet banking case study is going to take care about the input validation? Can you tell me, Muskan?
Yes, ma'am. So for the input validation and boundary conditions, I have presented some situations here in which the input validation can be compromised. So one of the commonly one of the common situations can be when the data entered for the login portal is not valid. So if the values are invalid, then the if the values are invalid, or the data structure set for those values are invalid, then the input validation can be not compromised, but it can show that you cannot enter the system or something. The second
How it is going to, how the data structure is going to affect on input validation?
Yeah, so for example, when we form a login page, then there are fields given on it, a name and your password. And if, for example, for the password field, one doesn't have the the data structure stored as maybe integer, or yeah, if the data structure stored for password is just integer, then the value which is going to be entered by the user and the data structure set for that field won't match. Then the whole system, then the user cannot enter that particular portal.
Okay, okay. I still do not understand. If I take an array, or if I take the stack or a queue
Hmm.
to take the input, so how it is going to, to understand the or create an attack surface?
So, if we are taking data structures like that, so password is a particular field which we input, and uh, it can just hide whatever the text we are entering, the password field basically. Now, if we talk about data structure, queues, and stacks, then I'm not sure if the person who is entering the password for the first time will understand how the things will work, and I'm not very sure that will the data he or she is entering will be hidden from the particular
Muskan,
user.
are you getting confused with the table and data structure?
Um,
Because
Ma'am,
whatever you are discussing with me, it is according to the whatever we are asking them to input. It is nothing to do with the data structure. And since you said specifically the data structure, that's why I ask you. Data
yeah,
structure may create a problem in the case of the buffer overflow attacks. Why
okay, ma'am.
not in the case of, to go with the input validation? Input validation is specifically your developer is responsible to do that and responsible to cross check.
Okay,
Fine.
ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
specific. And what about the boundary conditions, Muskan?
yes, ma'am. For the boundary conditions, I uh, so stack buffer overflow is one of the things can be performed by the attackers, wherein we can assume a scenario where all there are many authentication requests at the same time, and for with receiving so many requests at the same time, the system can resort to crashing.
Mhm. Muskan, I believe you need to actually, go ahead into, because you are going right, but somewhere the things are which is not according to what I want. The reason is because whenever you say the data structure, those data structure really belong to the uh, you do not have as a user or as a developer. If you are taking care about the text box and the input validation, it is fine. But input validation may result into the kind of buffer overflow attack if in the case you have taken care about the stack or array.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so this is the point what I want you to say, because we are not storing, ultimately the things are getting stored in the data structure, but what the user is going to see, user is just going to see the text box. User is never going to see the data structure. Are you getting me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, so now coming back to question number 2. So here, session sniffing you have written. So can you tell me what do you mean by this?
Ma'am, so whenever a person logs into a portal, a new session ID is created, and here we are talking about session hijacking mechanisms with authentication mechanism, and the listed reasons here are um, when the session is easy to guess. So I believe that session sniffing is kind of same as session hijacking, um, where the session is very vulnerable, and the attacker can easily exploit the valid computer session.
What could be the different kind of attack surface, Muskan, when the OTP is getting generated?
Different type of attacks.
I'm just asking a guess from your side. So when you say the internet banking, always the OTP is going to be generated, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So when the OTP is going to be generated, what could be the different, what are the different kind of attack surface?
Um, Maybe the attacker can get a sniff of the OTP which is received on the user's mobile by hacking into the mobile system and going through the messages, and the attacker can use that OTP to get into the account.
Fine. Thank you, Muskan. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I'm back. My mic started working.
Who is it?
Jatin, I
Jatin.
told you that I
Yeah.
was disconnecting and
Hold on.
joining again because my
Yeah.
mic was working.
Yeah, Jatin. So in the question number 1, you have written that it should be applied on both syntactical and semantical level. What do you mean by this?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, by syntactical, like where the level of syntax, for example, if the date format is incorrect or something like that, or currency format or any format is incorrect while putting it, like for example, if the programmer has put in string instead of integer on that, so over there it's a syntactic, and when there is a semantic, like particular range in which it should be there.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me how you have taken the SSN date symbol? What do you mean by this?
Ma'am, the date currency symbol is like the one which you enter. Like for example, if the user is entering a date, he cannot backdate his thing. Like whatever he is doing right now, it should be
Mm-hmm.
taken care of that the thing is not backdated. Like he
Mm-hmm.
can't
Mm-hmm.
put the previous date before like today, after
Mm-hmm.
today, and he also can't put the day ahead of today. Like if it's 12th April today, and he can't put the date of 14th April.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it becomes in range, so it has both semantic and syntactic because the date format shouldn't be string either. It should be date itself so that the user enters a proper date.
So how in the internet banking application your LDAP injection server will work?
Which one?
Server side. LDAP injection you have written into your question number 1.
Ma'am, that was just the data repositories which I got. I
Fine. So can you explain me the last paragraph what you have written
The last paragraph about
for
the
an
test.
internet banking application when the user registers?
Yes, ma'am. Semantic validation is done as it checks if the email ID is correct or not. Like whenever you register on some place, you first enter your email ID and then there is an OTP sent to your account.
Mm-hmm.
So if the OTP has gone there and the person has selected the entered the right OTP, he gets to have a verified email address. But the thing is like nowadays, there are more temporary email addresses available. So people just generate temporary mailbox and request OTP over there and just create a fake email ID and not give their real email ID. I still haven't found a way how to tackle that yet. I was searching on the internet, but it's like there are a lot of websites providing the same feature. And even if the bank just puts like only from email address from Yahoo or Gmail are allowed, people who are having their businesses won't be able to create an email ID on their internet banking application. So that might be a problem. So I'm
Okay.
still
And what
figuring
is then you have written about the password box while registration? What do you mean by password box here?
the password text box.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what okay, yeah. So that was for this thing, boundary testing. So if the password box accepts a minimum of 6 characters,
Mm-hmm.
he can't and the maximum of 6 characters. That means the test case becomes that any characters less than 6 would be counted as invalid, and more than 16 also should be counted as invalid. Only the requirement is the password should stay within the limit is 6 to 16 characters.
Okay. Fine. Okay. So going back to question number 2, session hijacking attack.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
do you think so the bank application is quite vulnerable for the session hijacking?
Like if the bank, like if there is another website created, like normally the phishing one, if that is created, then people can. But I don't think bank's website is vulnerable as they take enough security measures.
So when you take because of the session ID, the bank application could be vulnerable.
Yes, ma'am. If the session ID is shown,
If the session ID is
if the session ID is shown, like while sending it in PHP, if you send it using post, it is shown on the URL, right? So
mm-hmm.
if that is the way the bank is sending it, then it can be shown and it can
Okay.
be used to
Mm-hmm.
gain access to the web server or anything. So
Okay.
the session
Thanks a
post is
lot,
given.
Sachin. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you are remaining with your first evaluation as well
Yes, ma'am,
in
I'm
session.
remaining with my first evaluation.
Yeah.
Like
So
I submitted the file, I just haven't given the Viva.
yeah. Fine. Thank you, Jatin.
Yes,
Thanks
ma'am.
a lot. Nikhil Bagri, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Nikhil. So suppose I'm putting my username and the password in the internet banking application. Can you tell me how exactly this access control mechanism is going to processed?
Um, Ma'am, can you repeat the question?
I'm putting my username and the password into internet banking application. I'm asking you about the access control mechanism over here.
Ma'am,
What do you mean by access control mechanism?
hello?
Yeah, Nikhil, you are audible for me.
Yes, ma'am.
You have written the access control mechanism, isn't it? I'm just asking, what do you mean by this?
Ma'am, so in access control, ma'am, the application of constant on who or what, ma'am, uh, Access control is the application of constant on who or what can perform attempted actions or access resources that they have requested.
How do you differentiate between the authentication and authorization, Nikhil?
Ma'am, ma'am, they in authentication, it's the process of verifying who a user is, while the authorization is the process of verifying what they have access to.
So what the access
And
control is specifying?
sorry.
What do you mean by access control over here?
Ma'am, so ma'am, in in data in this data security, it shows who all are allowed to access a particular piece of information and resources from a data, and ma'am, that who to whom the company has given appropriate access to all the data provided.
Fine. Thank you, Darren. Sorry, Nikhil.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So all the other participants will discuss in the next session. And then I'm going to guide you how exactly you are going to answer the questions if any of the question examiner asks you or in the interview process. Right? So I'll stop here. Let me open up the attendance. Yes, PRN 18, please. Akash. Attendance, please. PRN 8. 9. 15.
Yes, ma'am, pen 15. Excuse me, ma'am. Can you check that it's showing there or not? Otherwise, I can mail you the file.
You, to be on safe side, just mail me.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah. 18. 19.
Present, ma'am, 19.
20. 24.
Present, ma'am.
29.
Yes, ma'am, present.
36. 37.
Present, ma'am, 37.
38.
38 present.
39. 40.
Present, ma'am. PRN 40.
44. 47. 51.
Present, ma'am.
53. 57.
53 present, ma'am.
Present, ma'am, 57.
61. 64. 72.
Ma'am, 72 present.
73.
73 present.
74.
Present, ma'am, 74.
80.
Present, ma'am.
84. 86.
Ma'am, I was audible, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
86.
87. 89.
Present, ma'am.
93.
Present, ma'am.
96.
Ma'am,
Who is it?
ma'am, Tanmay, 20.
Yeah. 103.
Ma'am, PRN8 also.
Yeah. 103. 104. 105. 107. 109. Fine. I will be meeting on Thursday. Tomorrow is a holiday, tomorrow and day after, so we will be meeting on Thursday. Fine?
Ma'am,
Yes?
yeah, was I audible during attendance? I have a lot of issues with my mic.
Who is it?
93, Varun Jaggi.
Yeah. Varun.
I'm
Okay.
also 89, ma'am. Did you mark?
Yeah, fine.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.